Get started on time. Excellent. Well, good morning. My name is Dan Matz. I will be your trainer this morning for the Core Officer Training, which we're going to talk about all 7 officers in 1 hour. I think that's excellent, efficient use of our time, I hope. So, just by show of hands, how many presidents do we have in the room? Just one. I've already talked with her a little bit. So you've been an officer for a while. This is your first term as president? Okay. Vice President Education. One? Just one. It's another great one. All right, we still have a few people coming in. I think you've been around a while, sir, is my guess. All right. Vice President Membership. 2, excellent. 3, any of you, this is your first time as a, okay, Pat, all right. Vice President Public Relations. No VPPRs here today? Well, we're going to talk about all the officer roles anyway, but we'll skip that one in detail. And Secretary, okay, Treasurer. You're the Treasurer? No, I'm Secretary. You're Secretary, okay, Secretary, Treasurer. Sergeant at Arms, excellent, near and dear to my heart on my club's Sergeant at Arms. This morning, this is a version of what Juliet Brown calls RTFM. Now, we use these acronyms and people don't know what they mean. That's a very simple one. Read the funny manual. That's what RTFM stands for. And this morning, we're going to be focusing on the manual called the Club Leadership Handbook. Now, in years past, there used to be a manual for every office. It was a little bit cumbersome. You'd get this big package in the mail, and you'd have to get each specific officer their book. Now it's all in one book, and unfortunately, the gentleman who's flipping the slides isn't here at the moment. We will flip to the last slide, and on there, you will find 2 things. One, my email address. All right, there he is. Can you go to the last slide for me quickly? Thank you. One more. Sorry, slick. There we go. So that's my email address. I don't know if it's a little fuzzy up here, but matzdr, M-A-T-Z-D-R, @usa.net. So if you go home this afternoon and you say, now what did he say about this? Or he said something about this, or he said I could get a copy of the handout, send me an email and I'll be happy to provide you a copy of the handout. There's also here a link, toastmasters.org/CLH. I may have the slash on there. No, I guess it's right. Club Leadership Handbook. And you can get it, it's in a PDF format. You can print it if you want. You really don't need to. You can review there, look for all of your specific responsibilities for whatever office you are in. Man, I feel like we're in church here. Everybody's sitting in the back row. There's plenty of good seats up front.
That's forward and that's backwards.
Oh, excellent. Wow.
You're back at the first slide.
Okay, great. So we'll review that at the end. Now, before we get rolling into the specific club officer requirements, does anybody have a burning question? You're halfway through the year and something's happening and you came to training this morning specifically to get the answer to a question. Yes, sir.
Why don't we rename that manual membership manual?
Well,
I get involved with just about everybody in the club, and that's where I'm sending.
Sure. I mean, there really is outstanding information in any manual. If you go to the back of the Competent Communicator Manual, a lot of this information is covered in there. It covers every role in the meeting. It talks about the officers. So we really do not understand the fabulous information we have available to us in the documents that we carry around with us, because we look at, oh, speech 1, the icebreaker, and we don't go to the back of the book. But in the back of the book, there's a lot of good information. So You can make that suggestion to International if you want, or I'll pass it on, okay? Anybody else have a burning question related to your club, something that's going on right now? No? All right, well, we'll talk about some scenarios as we go that may help spur your thinking. But as we go through this, if you have a question, something that's unclear or something that you would like to talk about in the group, raise your hand, we'll address it. All right, so we start with the club president. Club president. Now, it talks in the manual, it talks about 4 different areas, okay? Before club meetings, when you get to the meeting, during the meeting, and outside of the meeting. And as I said, I only have 5 handouts because I didn't think ahead of time that I was going to have, handouts for everybody because I had slides. So, but if you'd like to get one, send me an email, I'll send you one. So it talks about special recognition. The president of the club should be the cheerleader. President should be paying attention to, so-and-so just got their competent communicator. We should present that to them at the meeting. Make it a special event. Things that are happening in other areas of people's lives. Somebody had a baby. Somebody's child's graduating, something of that nature. Take a few minutes, spend some time, and make it a little bit of a celebration. So the president, please think about, because as a famous person once said, actually in a song, life goes on long after the joy of living is gone, okay? That can be an issue. In the Toastmasters club, you come to the club, it gets to be the same thing over and over and over again. Break it up, have some fun. All right, ask the VPM if there are new members to be inducted. How many of you have had, in the last 6 months, a new member induction ceremony? A few. It can get to be a difficult thing to schedule. Getting the right, the new members there, the VPM, the president, arranging it, finding time in the meeting. But try to do it periodically. When you get new members, focus on them. Give them an opportunity to say, hey, I'm joining an organization and they care about me. That's important. Business portion of the meeting. How many of you have a business portion of your meeting? All right. It's good to do periodically. If you have a short time span, you may not be able to do it every meeting. But if nothing else, talk about our next meeting is. Who's going to be doing what roles in the upcoming meeting? That's really the VPE's area. But try to provide an opportunity for whatever business you have as a club. You can talk about an upcoming, if you're having a special event or something of that nature. Parliamentary procedures, we weren't going to get into much detail on that. When you get to the club meeting, look at the agenda. Do we have an agenda? Who's doing what? What role do I have? And then make sure, this is really under every officer, you want to greet the guests and the members, of course, but in particular, we want to make sure we greet the guests. It used to only be under Sergeant at Arms. That was their specific role and responsibility. They are the greeters. But really, every officer needs to be paying attention, greeting guests, because every club needs new members. It's part of the way this thing works. Okay? All right, when the meeting gets rolling, you want to call and make sure and call the meeting to order. That's the first job of the president. And make sure the guests are introduced. And then you're going to introduce your Toastmaster of the meeting. Now, if you have variations on that theme, that's fine. Conduct the business meeting. Normally, you want to do the business meeting at the end. You can probably do it any way you like, but having the business meeting right off the bat is not generally the way I've seen it. Date, time, place of next meeting, announcements, adjourn the meeting on time. Outside of the meetings, attend and vote at area and district council meetings. All right, so how many of you have had an area council meeting? One? Oh, you're an area governor. That's good. Your area governor hasn't called a meeting or you haven't talked about? How did you plan, just out of curiosity, how did you plan the area contest last fall?
Well, pretty much doing a lot of research for myself.
Okay.
I invited them. One did show.
Okay.
One of the officers did show for the
Okay.
district. But I pretty much had everything planned.
Okay, well, so that was for your club?
Yes.
Okay. Then when you went from that to the area,
The area, I was invited from.
basically just online. Obviously, these days, there's a lot more availability of online collaboration. You can have a conference call. If you go to freeconferencecall.com, you can get your own dial-in number and PIN and have a conference call. I've used those for some of my division council meetings. But you should, if your area governor is not having any kind of meetings, you should make sure they're reaching out to you, because your area governor is your lifeline up to the district. They should be the first person you would contact if you have a question and issue a problem.
Don't you have the area governor invite everybody out to dinner?
That's a good way to do it. Annual business meeting. The district has business meetings twice a year. How many of you went? Oh, did you go to the fall conference? In the fall conference, we had a business meeting. Fortunately, there wasn't a whole lot of business to be conducted. It was mostly introductions and other information, so it was good. But normally in the spring, you're going to be voting for the new lieutenant governor of marketing, and there's other things to be addressed in the spring. So that'll be in May, something to be paying attention to. International convention, most people obviously send their proxy rather than attend themselves, but you have the opportunity as a club president to go to the international convention and vote. All right, appoint the chair of the club's audit committee. That's something that's good practice, is to have somebody look at the treasurer's books, make sure they're not setting up an offshore account somewhere with your $47 that you have in your club treasury. Nominating committee. Now, I have always thought of the nominating committee as the immediate past president's ball game. But it's actually the president's responsibility to appoint the nominating committee for the new officers. And in light of the session we just had, planning for success, every officer probably has somewhere in their responsibilities to look for your replacement. Because it's not really a good idea, the president is pretty much prohibited, but it's not a good idea for somebody to become the perennial whatever, vice president education, membership. It's not a great idea. Sometimes you can have an issue with someone who becomes that person and they don't want to give it up. I've seen that happen. That can be quite disruptive, because when they're not available, nobody else knows what to do. You have Florence, who's been the vice president membership for the last 10 years, and she wasn't at the meeting, so nobody else had a membership form. Nobody knew how much the dues were. It's best when you have backup. That's why there are 7 officers, so we all know to some degree what's going on, what the roles are. Okay? All right, Vice President Education. Vice President, yes, sir.
We put the stress on DCP really in the second half of the year. And most folks try to meet all those goals, knowing that the end of the year runs at the end of June. What they don't realize is the awarding of those things is based on your April 15th date. Because that's when the district goes into the TI database and determines who's been successful for the year. So if you're not pushing for April 15th, you've missed it. You've got to wait till the next year.
Well, you mean in terms of like giving out awards at the May? Sure. Well, certainly the earlier you can do it, the better. But you do have until June 30th to complete all of your DCP goals for the year to be distinguished. But yes, you should be planning for an earlier, it's always better to plan to complete by, say, the middle of April, and then if it takes longer, you have some cushion, you have some margin, so that's good. But the time to start thinking about who will be the officers starting July 1st, 2014 is now, or in January. It'd be a good time to get your officers together to have an executive committee meeting. In fact, does it say on there anywhere? It's probably on here somewhere. It should say, well, I'm sure it's in the book somewhere. The president should be the one who, there we go, schedule and chair club executive committee meetings. Executive committee meeting is simply you getting together as club officers and doing things like your distinguished club plan. Hopefully you did that back in July, August, September timeframe. And you have an outline, you have people you think are going to get their competent communicators, their advanced communicators, competent leader awards, and when you think those are going to happen. But now it's an opportunity, you're halfway through the year, to go back and say, okay, have we gotten our first 4 new members for the year or not? Yes, excellent. No. How are we going to do that? Should we have an open house? What things do we need to do to be successful between now and the end of the year? And going back to what Amy was talking about is an excellent place to get your planning together using those tools and resources. All right, Vice President Education. Primary role, responsibility, scheduling the club. They are responsible for the educational program. So, how many speakers are we going to have in general? Putting together a schedule. Now, clubs go both ways. You can go with, well, people are going to volunteer. If you have a club that's excited and people who want to speak, then you have enough people volunteering for the roles to fill your meetings, that's great. At some point, you're probably going to need to simply sit down, put together a schedule or plan going out a few weeks or few months in advance, and that's what the Vice President Education should be doing for you. There should be in front of every member a plan that says at the next meeting, you're going to speak. At the meeting after that, you'll be an evaluator. At the meeting after that, you're the timer. So that people can plan on what's going on, and also if they're not going to be there, they can let you know in advance, and you can be prepared for that. So Vice President at Education, I think this goes into a lot of detail. Review the roles 5 to 7 days in advance, support the Toastmaster. Yes, the Toastmaster of the meeting should be the person who schedules that individual meeting, but they should have input from the VPE that says, here are the people I have scheduled to give these roles. You should be able to start with that and then confirm and make adjustments as you go. That makes sense? How many VPEs do we have here? How far out does your schedule go?
3 months.
3 months. Very good. All right, educational sessions. This was something that Amy hit on as well. Successful Club Series, Leadership Excellence Series, Better Speaker Series. There are certain presentations that Toastmasters recommends that are given every year because we need to be reminded. We need to review. We need to be reminded, how are we supposed to find members for our clubs? We need to be reminded about the Distinguished Club Program. What are these 10 goals? Why do I, as a member who just joined, why do I care? Because this is what is important for this club to continue. So you should definitely plan those into your schedule to have those presentations given. Ensure a club member conducts successful club series programs. Evaluate to motivate. moments of truth, mentoring, and finding new members for your club once a year. See, it's right there. Those 4 things. Now, that can be difficult, but those are areas to focus on. And if you're the VPE and there's difficulty getting those things programmed, then you need to go talk to the president and the other members and say, look, we need to get these in. These are important. This is training that's important.
It used to be on the area governor's checklist. It's not there anymore.
Really? Okay. Should be. All right, and then notify the club president if somebody's gotten an educational award, because the way the educational award works is you go online, you submit the CC or whatever it is, and the actual form gets mailed to the member. Well, that can all happen behind everybody's back to some extent, so you need to contact that member and say, when you get that award in the mail, don't just, put it up on your wall or put it in the frame, whatever you're going to do. Bring it into the club, and we will present it to you at the meeting. Make it a bit of a celebration. Mary got her competent communicator, or competent leader, whatever it is. All right, so VPE, when you get there, make sure you've got people assigned. Remind members with meeting roles to select an evaluator. Well, okay, competent leadership, that's a good one. On our club, we have started assigning a member every week, every meeting, as the competent leader evaluator. Because the competent leadership manual, as Amy mentioned this morning, is kind of a long, drawn-out affair. To finish your competent leader normally takes about twice as long as your competent communicator. There are 20 projects, club roles that you need to fill to get your competent leader. And so that's something the VPE should be recommending. Bring your manuals to every meeting. Bring your competent leader manual. Every time you have a role, whatever it is, get evaluated. Get that signed off. All right, assist the Toastmaster. So obviously we've come to the meeting, we had people scheduled, somebody's not going to be there, so we have to take care of that. Greet the guests. And the VPE can do this, or often in our club, the table topics master will ask the guests up front, are you interested in participating in table topics? Here's what it is, here's how it works. It's not a good practice in general to wait until the table topic master stands up and then they say, and Mary in the back, would you like to participate in table topics? Put them on the spot. That's not a recommended technique. During the meetings, this is something we probably also need to remind people of, but in the back of your competent communicator book, you have the record of completion. I know it's in here. I was just looking at it. Here we go. It's where you put down the title and the date of every project. You should have your Vice President Education initial completion on that. That's not something that's normally, international is not going to be looking for that because some club officer can go online and submit that, so that's sort of the quality control check, if you will, that hey, it's not my award, it's someone else in my club, but I know they gave these speeches, so I'm going on and submitting for this award. Recognize members, that's overlaps with the president. When the president's not there, the VPE is the number 2 person in charge. So they would be the person calling the meeting to order, running the business meeting if one's needed. Answer questions from members. All right? So that's the Vice President Education role. Any questions to this point about President, VPE? Anybody awake? Yes, ma'am.
The only question I have is this has come up in our meeting. I've been president of our club. I've
So the question, just sort of, since they want to videotape this, I'll repeat the question, is you have a situation where nobody wants to run for president for next year. So the current president says, okay, I'll run. I think the official position from Toastmasters is that's highly not recommended. The president in particular is a role that they really recommend change every year. But that being said, if there's really no other option, it's not like they're going to disqualify your club from membership in the organization or something like that because you have someone repeat as president. The other situation that can be common, especially if it's an organizational club, is you've got 4 or 5 people and you kind of do musical chairs, you know. And Joe was president this year and I'll be it next year, and then Joe will do it again, and then Mary, and you know, it can become sort of a little clique, and that can be dangerous. You have to try, and you get somebody new who wants to come in, they may not even be aware that there are officers. Make sure you're training new people, taking them through orientation and saying, you know, you don't have to have been a Toastmaster very long to take on one of these leadership roles. You know, availability is the most important ability when it comes to being a club officer or any other officer, being in the district. If you raise your hand and say, I'll do it, that's good. Yes, Ralph.
Although I haven't experienced it myself, I was told many years ago that the club could not be distinguished if they didn't elect a new president. But in truth, I've never seen that happen.
Yeah.
But I've been told that.
That's interesting. So there was a directive or whatever that you wouldn't be able to be distinguished without if you had the president repeat. I've never seen that officially anywhere.
No, I've never tried to do this. I have been the one who submitted the officers list before June 30th, but it's possible they could have the software set up so that you couldn't submit the same name twice in a row.
It's possible, but I don't think we're there. Yes, sir.
So, did I hear you correctly that you say there are term limits and restrictions for the officers?
I wouldn't go so far as to say there are term limits, okay? In the club that I am, my main club, we just recently celebrated 45 years. For something like 40 years of that club, they never had anyone repeat as president. That was just their culture. But the strong recommendation, I guess I'd say it's a best practice from Toastmasters International, is the president in particular should not go multiple years. It's better to get new people in. And from my experience, I think that applies. You know, you can easily have someone who say, oh, I was treasurer last year. I've got, the signature cards. I've got the bank account. Everything's set up. No problem, I'll be treasurer again. The problem is after 4 or 5 or 6 years, now it becomes really difficult for somebody new to come in and take that over. So it's better if you can get the turnover of the leadership and share the wealth, if you will.
So that's your opinion, or that's the bylaws?
That's not an official bylaw or requirement from Toastmasters. They do frown upon having someone serve as president 2 years in a row. I know that, but that's as far as it goes. Sir.
When we first got started as a new club, it was Hey You, and we met once a week.
Yeah.
So in the second half of the year was Hey You, and we rotated chairs.
Yeah.
Then we decided we'd only do it 2 months a year. I'm almost willing to go back to that Hey You and get members to get into the leadership.
Yeah. Or you wait till somebody's not there and then vote them in.
I got it. There we go.
All right, so it really comes down to if it comes down to the point where there's 7 of you in the club and you're just growing around the circle and as officers, you're kind of in the death spiral, so that's not a good situation to be in. All right, vice president membership, absolutely a very important role because they're the person who's working to bring new members into the club. And we need new members in this club to keep it going. So make a list of new members who've joined, contact the president, coordinate an induction ceremony. Vice president membership should be saying, hey, we should do a membership induction. We've got 3 new members, we haven't inducted them. Let's take 10 minutes out of a meeting and do an induction ceremony. You can find all kinds of information about how to do the induction ceremony. My main recommendation, try and keep it short and sweet. You don't have to read everything in the whole manual to go through induction. But one thing to focus on when you induct new members, and this is even on the membership form now, is there's these thing called the Toastmasters promise, where they make a commitment. People make a commitment that I'm joining this club. I'm going to plan to come to the meetings, and participate. And this keeps you out of a situation where Joe comes and he says, all I want to do is speak. So if you don't schedule me in the meeting to speak, I'm not going to come. No, he has to understand up front, he needs to participate. This is not just a club where Joe can come in and speak and we're all going to sit and listen. No, Joe has to participate in various roles throughout the meeting, and that's part of the process. So there's that new members promise, or what I think it's called, is on the membership form, and they have to sign it, and a club officer has to witness it. That's required when you fill out the paperwork for a new member to join. I just learned that recently because I was reading, somebody gave me their form. I was like, well. So that's something, again, obviously they're not going to reject your membership application if you don't go through that process, but they're trying to encourage us to exercise these best practices. Guest packets, that's something you can make up yourself, you can buy them from International. You want to have some amount of information to give to guests when they come to your meeting. Contact former guests. You should have a list of who's attended. You can go back and contact them, say, hey, we're having an open house, or we're going to have our holiday party if you want to come, something like that. Greet guests and members at the door. Welcome them to the meeting. All right, that's every officer have that on their list. Provide guests with guest packets. Okay. Answer any questions. Another good practice for VPM or any officer is when you have a guest, especially if they come 2 or 3, don't just let them all sit together at the table over in the corner. If they all want to sit together, they know each other or something, have a couple of members go and sit with them. And as you go through the agenda, give them a little bit of explanation, talk about what's going on so they understand what's going on in the meeting. You're also available to answer questions. So that's something the VPM should keep an eye on. All right, any questions about VPM? They should be the person who has membership forms ready, but it's also good for every officer to have membership forms. Or if you have a box of your club supplies, have a folder in there with membership forms. So if the vice president membership doesn't show up, any officer can go pull out the form, walk through it with the guest, and explain to them what the cost would be if they decide to join. Vice President Public Relations. All right. I found this one interesting. Verify the club's themes, meeting times, location are current. I don't generally associate club themes or meeting themes with Vice President Public Relations. I think that's normally more under education, but it's in the book, so it must be right. But make sure your meeting times and location. So you are the person who's communicating outside of the organization. So if you post to a community website or have an announcement in a paper or on some kind of a community bulletin board, meetup, that sort of thing, and then VPPR, that would be their role. Promotional materials, so if you want people to put up posters or signs or hand out pamphlets or something, you need to make those available to people. Give them out. Recommend that they use them to provide publicity. Publicize your upcoming club meetings. During the meeting, you can distribute promotional materials, results of any public relations campaigns that you've done, announcement of a new one, and solicit volunteers. Typically, the other thing that falls under VPPR, it's not specifically in the book, is if you're going to have a club newsletter. They would either be the club newsletter editor or they would solicit someone to be the editor for your newsletter, and that would be published within the club, or you can publish it on your website. That makes sense? All right. Secretary. We have secretaries here? We have, okay. Anybody who's a joint secretary and treasurer? All right, that used to be more common. It's not so common these days. Secretary, before the meeting, post the minutes of your previous club meeting online and notify club members that the minutes are available for review. That's if you do minutes of your club meetings, which not always done, but it can be helpful to have a summary of the meeting, especially for people who weren't able to attend, to understand, you know, they go back and see who spoke and those sorts of things. It can also be very helpful for at the end of the year if you're trying to figure out, you know, if you have an award for participation of various sorts or whatever, you can go back to the meeting minutes and figure out who gave, you know, who was Toastmaster the most times and things of that nature. So it can be very helpful to have that documentation. Prepare for the president a list of actions to be taken. Wow. So if you have any unfinished business, announcements, correspondence, generally we don't have a lot of those. Update the club officers list. These days, if you go to, you can go to International and get your club's membership list, but the club officer list would be for your internal use within the club. So you can maintain that, or you can just use what's online. When you get to the meeting, circulate an attendance sheet and a guest book. Guest book in our club is managed by the vice president of membership, but a guest book is a good thing to have so you can collect information on your guests, get their email address, and be able to follow up with them. During a club business meeting or executive committee meeting, you're going to keep the minutes of that as well, and that's important if the executive committee is meeting and you decide on date, time for your open house, things of that nature. You want to record that, make sure that information is provided. Read the minutes of the previous meeting, note amendments. In our club, when we have an executive committee meeting, the minutes get sent out to all of the officers. If you have any comments, you send them back. And then at the next meeting, the president says, everybody got the minutes. Any more issues? No, okay. We accept the minutes. It can be pretty straightforward, but it's an important thing to do. Okay. Anybody's fallen asleep yet? That's good. All right, treasurer, financial report. It's probably a good idea to have your treasurer provide some kind of a financial report on occasion, just so you know, you as the executive committee and the club membership, where do these dues go? What are they being used for? So you can show we had this much money came in, this is how much we shipped off to international for our international dues, and then we bought the following supplies. We had a dinner meeting and we paid for the dinner, and here's our balance. Something pretty straightforward, but it's important to check up on periodically. People have a sense of ownership of we're paying dues to this organization. Where's that money going? Are the club officers going to go on a Caribbean cruise with all this money? Probably not. During the meeting, collect any payable membership renewal dues. Oh, that's a mouthful. And fees. So it's good to have someone designated, especially when it's coming up on dues collection time, so in March of next year. It's good to have someone designated at the meeting to collect a check. These days, a lot of people want to pay with credit card. It's harder to do. Now, if you have that with your bank, that's great. But in most cases, I've encouraged people, you can pay your international dues with a credit card because somebody can go online, fill out the information, make that payment. But getting a credit card payment into your bank account for your club can be more difficult. So normally you can probably have to have people give you a check or cash for your club portion of the dues. Any treasurers have questions or issues that you're dealing with right now? Or?
I used to be a treasurer, and it bothered me to have that credit card information on the application, like when someone new joined.
Mm-hmm.
They would say, can I pay by credit card? And they would write the credit card information. And I didn't want to keep that information around, and I was careful.
Yeah, you should definitely shred that, or, yeah, that's a good point. Yes, but, so it's easy to pay your international dues with a credit card these days. Go online and do it. But in most cases, getting your club dues, your local club dues paid, you have to go back to the old-fashioned check, or cash always works too. All right. And it probably says this, financial report. But the other thing, the big thing for the treasurer is if there are expenses, people buy things for the club, whatever it may be, they are going to submit those receipts to the treasurer, and the treasurer will then pay them. So it comes down to that. There's another important one for the treasurer. Every year, by May 15th, you have to fill out this electronic form. Typically only takes 10 minutes. But if you don't do it, it can jeopardize your club's tax-exempt status and subject your receipts to income tax. So it's pretty important that the treasurer do that. Yes, we have a resident expert here, Ralph.
Yeah, club treasurers don't have to do that anymore.
Oh, they don't? Oh, good.
World headquarters now, they tried having all the club treasurers do it, but you can imagine trying to get thousands of club treasurers to do this once a year wasn't successful. So now World headquarters has wisely decided that they're going to do it.
They're going to do it.
Clubs.
Excellent. All right, so we'll
Only if your club has
take this out.
$50,000 a year.
Oh, okay.
Then you have to let World headquarters know.
All right.
How many clubs are in that platform?
Any clubs here have 50,000 a year or more? All right, so that's coming off. That's good. The manual I took this out of was updated in April, but this sounds like a new development.
It's now called $4.99 yet.
Yes, $9.90.
$9.90. Okay. All right. Well, that's good. Good to know. All right. And again, the best practice is that you should have an audit committee, a couple members of your club who are not, hopefully not subject, well, it would probably be best to get someone from outside your club to come in and look, but realistically, you get a couple members of your club, go talk to the treasurer, look at the books, make sure everything's in order. And last but not least, my favorite, the Sergeant at Arms. I am my club's Sergeant at Arms. Meeting room reservations. This can be an issue depending on where you meet. If you have to come up with a new meeting room to meet in every time, then that's something you need to be on top of. Hopefully you're fortunate enough to have a location that you meet consistently, but making sure that that is set up in advance and people know where you're meeting. Plenty of blank ballots available. Wow. That's an interesting one to put before the club meeting. I would say make sure you have the supplies prepared in advance for your club meeting. Whatever supplies it is your club uses. So blank ballots is one. In my case, I have the gavel, I have the ribbons we give out, I have the trophies, I have various other things. We have a meal before our meeting, so I have the plates, the cups, the silverware, the napkins, and all that good stuff. Sir?
It used to be nice when we had the bookstore and you could go in there twice a year and buy what you need.
But they've gotten a lot faster online with shipping. So the comment was it was nice to have the bookstore. There's a lot of overhead having a district bookstore, so I won't say anything more about it. You can address that to the district governor if you like. All right, arrange the meeting room and the equipment at least 30 minutes before the meeting starts. Well, that sounds like an overly ambitious goal, but you should make sure the meeting room is set up and prepared. Arrange tables and chairs and so forth. Hopefully that is not a large task. Lectern, gavel, your banner, if you have one, a flag, a national flag if you have that. Timing lights, ballots, trophies, ribbons, all those things that you might need to run the meeting. So that's the Sergeant at Arms ball.
What's the status on the new banners? Are you required or not required to have?
Status on the new banners. Wow. I don't know that there is any requirement to get a new banner. They've rebranded. Some people like the old banners, having those cross gavels and the history and all that stuff. Our club, we were fortunate enough, because Benny Bow is one of our members, they actually gave us a new banner because he was past international president, so they gave him a banner to give to every one of his clubs. So we have a new banner, but we still have our old banner. We display both of them. So I don't think there's an official, you must, and hopefully they won't make that an issue.
Streamers on the new banner?
What's that?
Can you put all your streamers on the new banner?
I wanted to see why not.
No one I've never seen a new banner with.
You haven't seen a new one with ribbons on it?
Never have.
Never have.
I don't think anyone knows how to do it.
Oh.
You know, they're pretty flimsy.
Oh. That's interesting. See, we still have them all displayed on our old banner, so we haven't ever tried it. It's interesting. Okay, that's an interesting question. Has anybody tried putting banners on the new, or ribbons on the new banner? To ask that question. All right. Sit near the door. There we go. Coordinate food service. Collect the ballots. Again, greet guests, greet the members as they come in. After the meeting, make sure the room gets returned to configuration if it needs to be. Pick up materials, store them, pick up and dispose of trash. So basically, the logistics for the meeting. The Vice President, Sergeant at Arms. No, the Sergeant at Arms, all right? This is sort of thrown in for extra credit here, the Healthy Club Guidelines, okay? Club officers attend training. See, you're all here. That's excellent. You meet the first one right there. Fulfill their roles and responsibilities. Obviously, if you haven't been trained, you don't know what your roles and responsibilities are, so now you are empowered and you know your roles and responsibilities, so you're in good shape. Meetings are planned to have good attendance. New members are inducted. New members receive orientation. How many of you have done new member orientation this year? A few? Excellent. It actually can be pretty straightforward because, as I was talking about the manual, if you go in the back of the manual, the Competent Communication Manual, starting on page 66, there's a section called About Your Club. We have 10 minutes, excellent. And it talks about every meeting role, what the meeting role is, what the responsibilities are. You could do new member orientation, take 15 minutes and walk through this. You could even make it part of a meeting because it is grammarian, counter, optional meeting participants. You know, in our club we have a joke master. What is that person supposed to do? Hopefully give us a funny joke, not read it, hopefully. And then it talks about your club's leadership. It goes through each and every officer's role in 3 pages. And that can be very, again, it comes down to reading the manual. Okay, members are involved in every aspect of the club. Comes down to communication. Communicating, that's one of the reasons why you should have a business meeting from time to time. Let everybody know what's going on. If you had an executive committee meeting, you made some decisions, you made a plan, have someone present that. They can even make it a manual speech. Here is our club's program, our plan, our distinguished club plan for the coming year. I like the way Amy did it. Number 10 we've already got. You know, we've already submitted this. Your officers are on the ball. We've already submitted the officers list. We were on time with our dues renewal on October 1st. Therefore, we've already got the first point of 10. Make that a big deal. And then go back and then go all the way back to CCs. We need you as members to complete your competent communicator. We need 4 of them to get these 2 points. And make that something you communicate and train people on so they are not asking, what's the DCP again? What's a CC? What's a CL? How's this ACL? What's that? What's a DTM? So they are informed. Make it something that you do on an ongoing basis. Keep people up to speed. All right. Soapbox there. Members always speak from the manuals. That's a good, very good practice that you don't want to get away from. Guests are made to feel welcome. Yes?
Sorry, can you go back? I don't know what that means.
You don't know what that means? Every speech that's given in a Toastmasters club should be one of the projects from the Competent Communicator Manual or one of the Advanced Communication Manuals, and it should be evaluated. If you do a speechathon where you're trying to get people through and you don't do oral evaluations, that's okay, but normally there should be speech, and then during the evaluation portion of the meeting, there is a verbal evaluation as well as they are provided a written evaluation in their manual. Okay?
If you participate in a speech contest, you have your manual with you.
That's right. Every time you give a speech, even a speech contest, you can make that a manual project and have someone give you a written evaluation. Okay? Guests are given information about the benefits of Toastmasters, and member accomplishments are recognized. That goes all the way back to the beginning for the president. President's the cheerleader for the club. Make sure we recognize one another. Now, I had this epiphany as I was driving here this morning that really, when you join Toastmasters, part of the first thing you really come to understand is that we are pretty irrational in the way we think. And what I mean by that is, according to the surveys, 90% of the people walking around out here have a high on their fear list. Public speaking is higher than death. But yet we drive around out on the Beltway and Fairfax County Parkway. I mean, we put ourselves at the risk of death every day around here. So when you join Toastmasters, you recognize that that's just irrational, because giving a public speaking or giving a presentation, hopefully at the end of it, I got it 5 minutes ago, at the end of it, you're going to walk out of here, your friends will still be your friends, your relatives will still be your relatives, It's going to be all right. You're going to get through it. So that's my inspiration or my epiphany of the day. Do we have any last-minute questions? We have a couple minutes left. Sir.
Are we ever going to get to the point where we put logging into the TI and the 29 Toastmasters website? A lot of folks in those clubs don't understand. Even just to go shopping.
That is a good point. And that's one of the reasons I put this link here, is because not only can you get the club leadership handbook there. How many of you have gone and looked at your club's Distinguished Club Program website on the international? Few of you. That is something that would be great to do as your executive committee. Go pull that up and say, oh, this says we've only submitted 1 CC. But have we completed 3? What happened to those other 2? Have we submitted it? Sometimes there is a lag between the time when they get submitted and they're actually posted on the reports page. But it's a great opportunity for you to see what's been reported and what does Toastmasters International think your status is as a distinguished club compared to what you think it is. So, good point. But yes, that is a good, that should be in there. It should be number 1 for every officer, right? Yes.
Is there a way to get these slides?
Yes, if you send me an email, mattsdr@usa.net, I will be happy to send you the slides. And then, as I said earlier, you may have missed it, all the information comes directly out of the Club Leadership Handbook, which you can also get as a PDF from the international website. So the slides are simply focusing in on each officer's role. Yes, sir.
So how often do you give this core training?
How often do I give this core training? When I get asked.
To me, I think to better align this with the term, because our terms begins the July 1st.
Right.
And you only conduct your core training mid-term. A lot of us, including me, I can't speak to it. I don't know what my jobs and responsibilities are when I first elected.
Okay, well, they do, the training, the district training happens twice a year. So back in June, July, August, they had a number of different sessions, and I don't know if you went to one of those training sessions or not. They typically break it down so it's focused in on, and it's supposed to go for 2 hours, but they'll focus it in on, the president and sergeant at arms or something like that. So it's not usually the whole set of officers all at once, but the training definitely is provided twice a year for all the officers. All right. Thank you very much for your time. If you feel so inclined, please fill out the evaluation form. I believe we have a break now. Let's see, it is 11 o'clock. So we have until 11:15, and then in this room there will be a session on mentoring, and in the main auditorium, how to plan for the high performance leadership project, which is something we need to do to get DTM. All right? Thank you.